Okay, so before I start, and I'm gonna go take a break actually before I actually start. But I do want to clarify that my decision after that big hit was to purchase the hotels over on Baltic and Mediterranean. Now you can see Mediterranean's a bit of a slum, and they built some modern public housing over on Baltic. I chose not to build up the Reds. I don't have that much extra money. There's no one heading there right now. The main thing I'm worried about is that one last hotel. It would be kind of nice to pick that up, but it would cost me two more houses at $300, and then the hotel, it would cost $450. That's almost as much as these two hotels cost me. I just don't feel like the risk is that high. I only pulled in $1,200. I was low on cash before that. I want to keep some padding because there are still some hits available out there. I've got these things which can run up to $900. That's a pretty decent amount of money compared to, say, what I'm looking at with these. It doesn't feel like the kind of blow. But the point here is, there's no reason. I'm not in a race particularly for the houses and hotels with anyone at this point. Nobody else has cash, really. This guy does. A little bit, not much. Everybody else is just dirt poor. Overextended their investments, I guess. But the problem is if you don't do that, if you don't extend, and buy what you can, for the most part, you end up not collecting enough cash when you get landed on. That's the problem this guy had. He was pissed at himself for only having one house on Park Place, even though it was a low odds brawl, not tremendously so, and then just didn't get the kind of capital that he would have gotten with the three houses on each. Now he didn't get landed on and got hit by the card that he was aiming at the guy, and just didn't work out well for him. Bad decisions. A lot of risk management in this game. All right. Okay, off to break time. Looks like it's getting pretty close to over here. The car just made a roll. It got them down to Marvin Gardens. That's another $1,200. Obviously, they don't have the cash. That pretty much is... we'll see what they can raise. But nobody can afford to float that money for them. So it's going to be more properties for this guy. He probably has the money to develop them, at least in a limited fashion. Now, as we wind down the end of the turn, or the end of the cycle around, we can see all the money's gone from here. He spent that $200 to build a house on a one-shot, try to hit something. He's got to get so lucky to do well here. In fact, he's not the only person, really. This guy, too. And this guy, he's got to wipe out a couple, one of these other players and then get lucky. So we've got a clear leader, which means other players can maybe collude to some extent against him, but there's not a lot that you can really do here. The only thing really is, it's really kind of if you're leaving the table anyway, maybe you can arrange a deal, a sale of property to give just the correct amount of money rather than to give the wealthy property to someone who's already in the lead, to make the game a little more interesting for other people. But that's a form of king making too. But then again, so is not raising all the money and just giving the person the property when you're $3 short, like we saw somebody do. So, it's really kind of a who do you want to benefit and why? I think trying to make the game interesting isn't terribly a good goal, actually. Shu ended up in jail. The hat ended up with some painful hits. $150 community chest card here. Then income tax. He rolled a pair of double ones. So $200 for the income tax. I didn't calculate it. I'm wondering if maybe I could have gotten away cheaper because he didn't have a lot of cash on hand. And his properties are only worth $320, $620, $760, plus the hotels on them. Those get evaluated full. he probably would have come out ahead without having to pay the full $200. And had he done that, maybe you wouldn't have to rip up houses. Bad choice there. Usually at this point in the game, if you're still in it at all, it feels like, hey, I got over $2,000 in property in holdings. But this has been, with so many players, it gets kind of tight. So now we're coming around back to our cannon, which has a little nasty row. He doesn't have to build houses yet, but he's going to have to build up his orange houses very shortly. Good idea to keep some money on hand. $750, had it in pocket to pay for a stay at St. Charles Place. I could have afforded even Virginia with some minor, with mortgaging off the electric company or waterworks type stuff. Okay, for the iron here with their pile of newfound property and no wealth, well, they made a quick stop at St. James Place, and that ripped up their house. Now they're at Indiana, and that's $1,050. That may be the end for them. Nobody's going to be able to bail them out. So, not of that much money. There just isn't that much cash kicking around here. We had that, well, how much was that big hit? That big hit on, yeah, was $750. That's really all he has here. So he'd have to be able to buy a significant pile of property for that. Now, if he can get either the greens or the railroads, he might take the railroads instead. They might be worth paying that much for. We'll see. This guy's not going to stay in the game without one of the two. The 4 railroads mortgaged went for $600. Good deal, not hard to tell. Here's the deal. He had to mortgage something to get something. He would rather have his big set. He thinks, there's some chance if I dance around, that'll actually survive and I'll be able to win off that. There's no way I can win off the railways. Now, we've seen green is not something good to have when you're low on cash. But green with the railways was kind of interesting because the railways do have a capability to push some extra cash towards you. This guy would have rather had the green by far. What he needs is power punch, but getting another set of lighter things that he can sweep in with, it's worth something. So that's done with the iron. We're on to the shoe, who's lucky for him in jail. And before the hat's turn, some additional accommodations have been provided. This is basically all the cash that I could afford. In fact, I'm down to just about nothing, but taking him out is pretty much the game. So I had to be careful and make sure there were enough houses that I could build all the 2 hotels. There's still another hotel available, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, or dice or whatever, but like with the houses, I don't have enough actual tokens for them, so I have to resort to this if I had to physically show it. All right, let's see what the hat gets, because this could be very bad for him. A 2. He lands on Pennsylvania Railroad, but he gets to roll again. Do I have enough money for another house there? I don't know. And 11. That's not good. At least it's only 1 that he hit, but it's still going to be sufficient to probably wipe him out. $1,150. Actually a reasonable amount of value there. He mortgaged off his purples. He's still got the blues. Still got houses on them. And a big pile of cash over here. Didn't roll doubles. So we go back to the... Well, a little 2 houses on Park Place is still $500. And that's more than the hat can afford at this point. Now, I don't know if it's going to crack him. 150, 225 for that. Plus property is worth 50, and 60 is 110. 335. Now the question now becomes, hey, I'm okay with you. I'll tell you what. I'll pay that $500 for you. One of the 2 sets. Your call. $500. Real easy. You're still in the game in that case. And I mean, you got a set you kind of got to go with this, even if it's helping this guy out. Now, this guy can say, okay, I'll take the set instead, which changes the dynamic of it. Which set? Well, I'll give him the railroads for the $500. Now, this guy could continue to make offers increasing the deal. But, you know, there's sort of a level at which, okay, look, just cut me the same deal he's willing to give and we're good. And that's where we're at here. Also because, you know, there's a certain extent of not really wanting, you know, to fight it out and try to claw out every last penny out of the situation. Because this guy cannot give more money. The best he can give is the $500. This guy has cash he could throw in. But he doesn't particularly want to give cash to people. He'd rather see them crash bankrupt on each other. With the shoe landing, the other shoe dropping on New York at $1,000. Essentially, this could just be transferring over there anyway. 1, 2, 3, 4, 500. 6, 7, 875. I'm gonna barely be able to make it, I think. Not quite. I'm at 900 and something. I'm not gonna be able to make it. Everything's mortgaged. Nobody has the kind of money to keep him in the game, to keep his properties from going to the assassin here, along with all this money. A decent amount of cash on top. And the shoe is gone now. And really, you know, this is the point where you could certainly very easily say the game is over, concede. There is nothing else left. We've got a broke guy, not entirely, but close. He can barely build a house, holding the greens, which, you know, he's been making a lot of good money. People keep landing on Pacific at $52. And then somebody who's got 2 sets, but no cash. But we'll see. Maybe this will turn out over here, and he'll be able to develop, and we'll see some kind of epic win of the nature that you never see. Yeah, you're more likely to see that kind of comeback in fast food franchise, for example. All right, so that was the shoe that puts us over to the hat. And is he in Doomland? Everything's dangerous for him. With Boardwalk and Park Place open, well, they're not going to get purchased at this point, but the choo-choos, I might want to restart that. Didn't hit anything too ugly. Gets his $200 and chooses to take the 10% hit. Turns out he only had around $1,200 worth of assets. I count these at full value. I think that's correct, even though they're mortgaged. These guys are, of course, counted at full value. This isn't worth anything. And then the houses are all counted at full value as well. So, you know, he ended up making $80 from his trip around. A little bit of ebb and flow, though. Landing on Oriental, $270 into his pocket. That's enough money to maybe bring these guys out. And this is the thing. Once you're in this situation, what you got to do is you got to go for broke on every die roll. You got to assume your luck's going to be completely as perfect as possible, because you don't have a chance otherwise. So what he's got to assume is that the cannon is going to land on one of his properties here, and that he's not going to hit any of his opponent properties. The chance of that, almost nothing. It shortens the game to play that way, and it actually improves your chances of winning ever so slightly. There's really still no chance, but the point is, there is no opportunity for you to whittle the cannon down just by holding on to these properties. Whereas if you go for broke and try to, you know, generate more income, and you get the luckiest string of rolls, you know, the other way, whatever your lucky string of rolls is, eventually, you know, you're just not going to be bringing the income in over the course of the time. Now, how long a lucky string can you get is kind of the question, is basically, you know. So it requires a much longer lucky string if you do not, you know, build up your property as soon as you can. Because the truth is, the next hit will kill him. The next real hit. So, of course, then the question is, yeah, but look, he's got the railroads and the waterworks and electric company. Why make those painful, too? Yeah, I know. It's a hard call, but one shortens the game. Another hard call that probably didn't need to be made. Hotels here. I got tons of money, so it's not a big harm there. But I've got these guys to develop still, and they're a big deal. I'm not terribly worried about getting control of all the hotels. 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, but I'm down to only one remaining, which will probably go on Boardwalk. Park Place is actually more reasonable to put it on because it evens out the violation aspect of it. But, you know, some of it is clearing away the houses because I have a limited amount compared to what I should and other factors. Right now we're on the iron. We'll see whether or not his death is here. 8. 6, 7, 8. He survives. There's a go back 3 spaces and a go to Illinois, both of which could hose him there. Puts us on the hat, who's also in line for his own death. 7. Yeah, that's it. 950. He's not going to be able to afford that, and he doesn't have the cash down. Indeed, he came up with most of it, but we're down just 2 players now. And it's kind of a shame when you can come up with most of it, because not only are you giving all your property, but you're giving the cash as well. Get out of jail free card. That doesn't get transferred. And trying to see where else we are here. That was the hat's turn. He's gone. We're back on the cannon. There's really nothing that can be done here, but what I'm looking at is considering, hey, what do I want to open up first? And that's going to be based on where he comes. It's going to be the Boardwalk and Park Place. Cannon can't reach the green, so we'll figure out. I'll come back. And now with the iron coming around, 2 houses on each Boardwalk and Park Place has sufficient killing power. Let's see if they get hit by it. Doesn't look like it. They do get to land at the hotel on Mediterranean, which is worth diddly squat. $250. But that may be enough cash to get these guys open. Or these guys. I can't afford both. I'm kind of strapped for cash at this point, actually. The cost of unmortgaging is too risky. I've got enough cash to handle most emergencies. Just landed at Pacific. That was $130. So I'm going to let him have a free ride through this corner. Sometimes that free ride is not what she seems. Illinois with a hotel is $1,100. That is not here. I think it's time for a concession. I think it's actually over, but it's just a matter of not counting at this point. That's 200, 500, 600 and something, it's over. So we have a winner. And what was it decided by? Well, because it's such a big, because it was such a large set of players, initial luck was humongously important. And to tell you the truth, when you're playing in 8 players, if you're sitting on the bottom end of the seating chart, if you're towards the back end and you're landing on other people's property right on the very first turns, yeah, you're at a huge disadvantage. The game probably works best in around 4 to 5 players. Once you start getting more than that, you've got this tilt. But you could use that as a handicapping factor to allow better players, force them to sit further back in the seating. Because people who can cut better deals are going to have a significant advantage overall. Maybe not enough to overcome the 8-player version of the game. And I was thinking about playing 10. So, you know, you have that initial luck, who got sets. And a few people got sets. This was one of the... Well, nobody got sets to begin with. They had to deal for them. But then as the game progressed, more and more deals started showing up. Once all the property was out, people who had been left out of the initial deal tried to figure out and scramble to see what they could get. Even, one guy went with the railroads, and he actually stayed in and ended up getting a color set by making that deal, a position that wouldn't have happened otherwise. The Greens, they're okay in a small number of players. But they were, painful. They were painful to be given. He probably should have held his railroads instead of the Greens at the point he was at, because he might have killed someone with a railroad and got their property. Because the Greens are just an untenable situation once you get to any reasonable number of players. And even in 3, which is, sort of the minimal that you have here for a reasonable game of Monopoly, I think. I play 2-player, but it's pretty lame. Even in 3, there's nothing but luck to a 2-player game of Monopoly. Even in 3 people, you end up with this kind of, it's tough to make the Greens work. Those houses are just too expensive and you need too many of them. Boardwalk and Park Place aren't so bad because there's only 2 properties. You don't have to fill them up as much, and you got cards to help get you, a card to help get you to Boardwalk. But I generally stay away from this street. In fact, this is my street. The oranges. I always go for the oranges. I kind of like the pale blues too, but that's for a perverse sort of reason. Like the railways, they make a nice little slush fund to help one of your other holdings. What's really weird here is that this guy was running off the reds and yellows initially, which probably seems like that's a little too rich to start off with. But it worked out fine for him. One thing was this got cash poor in a hurry once the sets were out, and to the point where everybody probably could have afforded to pay the 10% rather than 200 taking an advantage by doing so. All right, up this goes, and then I'm going to come back and give Monopoly a review.